The Axopar 37 has been one of the world's most successful boats. Best-selling boat in its category in America, both in 2024 and 2025. And over the years, Axopar has built and sold more than 3,000 of those. So when it introduces a new Axopar 38, it's got a very serious job to do indeed. We got the Suntop versions, a couple here, 300 horsepower and 350 horsepower twin rigs. Different configurations, making their world debut for us journalists. But this is the boat we're principally going to be testing. This is the new Axopar 38 cross cabin. Now, the first thing to talk about with this new Axopar 38 is the size of the thing, because at least for now, both the 37 and the 38 are going to continue to run concurrently. And happily, the size differential is quite significant. This boat measures 38 foot and 11 inches. That's 1 foot 2 inches longer than the 37, but also 7 inches wider in the beam. 1,500 kilos heavier, so it's a far more substantial boat. It's a boat of a different order, and you absolutely see that when you get up close to these things. In terms of the hull, it's the same basic hull form, quite a fine entry, quite an aggressive hull with twin steps. But here, we've got slightly more pronounced chines to give it a little bit of extra bow elevation, which is ideal for a following sea. And we've also got a more substantial flare, just for extra dryness in exactly those same sorts of seas. We've also got a more elevated freeboard for extra safety, the same traditional Axopar walk-around decks. Very safe and easy to navigate your way around. And as on the 37, the engine options are pretty much the same. You get either a pair of V8 300s, or in the case of this boat that we'll be testing, a pair of the uprated V10 350s for extra torque, extra pace, extra grunt. And it's likely to be the more popular of the two options, particularly, as I say, given that this is a much larger, more substantial boat than that 37. But apparently, with the 300s, you can expect just in excess of 40 knots, and with these 350s, round about 46, 47 knots. So it's certainly no slouch. Now, being an Axopar, these boats are, of course, highly configurable. So if we look at the boat we're standing on now, which is also a cross cabin, you'll see that on this boat we've got the twin 300s, and we also got a very open aft cockpit with a decent wet bar there built into the back end of the superstructure, and a pair of lounge seats, one on either side, with space inside those for a bit of extra storage. Great place for your lines and your fenders. If we look across to the test boat today, we've got the 350s. We've also got an option that is so popular for so many buyers of Axopars, particularly in the northern parts of Europe, that aft cabin, slightly sunken into the aft deck with a sunbed on top. And that's a great spot, that, just to sit underway in the shelter of that superstructure. Really sheltered, lots of comfort, and there's still a decent bit of space around the back end of there to make your way from side to side and fore and aft. As on previous models, you can opt for a wet bar in that port module, but as you can see on the test boat, we just have the two optional lounges instead, presumably because the owner deems an additional wet bar aft unnecessary, because we got the optional galley unit down on the port side of the cabin. Either way, it's interesting, before we actually jump on board the test boat, to see that in spite of the fact we've got a much more open deck and the absence of that aft cabin on this particular model, we don't have an enormous amount of storage beneath this deck. It's relatively shallow, because actually most of the vertical room inside that aft cabin is engineered into that space above deck level. It only goes a little bit beneath deck level to accommodate a double berth. So a little bit of shallow storage here, not particularly substantial, and then you're down into the batteries and the engineering spaces. But let's just jump across and we'll take a look at the way the test boat is configured, because this is particularly interesting. Now, this is not just an aft cabin. As I say, it's topped with sunbed, big enough for 2, maybe even 3 people. And there's a nice little lumbar support here, so when you sit with your back to this glass facing aft over the transom underway, it's a tremendously comfortable place to be, very sheltered, as I say. We've also got little trays and cup holders built in there. They need to be drained, of course. And we've got grab handles, fabric grab handles there as well. But it'd be good to see some higher level grab handles as well, just to really anchor yourself in position when the boat is being driven quite fast and quite aggressively, potentially through lumpy seas. As I say though, really comfy spot. And what's particularly interesting to me is that even though you're up close to these big old 350s, these big V10s, there's absolutely no fumes working their way back into this cockpit space. No spray, no fumes. There's no low pressure zone sucking that stuff back in, because they've been very careful to shape the mouldings both on the sides of the superstructure and on top of that roof structure, such that you've got a nice laminar flow of air over this section of the boat. So as I say, very sheltered, very comfortable, no fumes, no spray, no wetness. Really good place to sit. And when they introduce optional rigid handles up top, as Jan Erik, the co-founder of the company, intends to do, it'll be all the better for that. Now you can of course lift up this entire hatch here to gain access down into that aft cabin, chuck baggage down or whatever you need to do. And there's also a good bit of storage inside these peripheral units on the side beneath these loungers. They lift up in a fore and aft angle, and actually the catches on boat number 1 here are a bit loose, so when you're ploughing along at 40-45 knots occasionally they will open, so that needs a little bit of finessing. But what we'll do is move slightly further forward. And actually, before we do that, one more thing to think about. As you can see, we've got hinges on the back of this superstructure here. That's because this window opens right up, and that's a really nice feature. Integrates these 2 sections of the boat, that internal dinette with this external sun lounger, much better than you might imagine. It's really quite practical when you're at anchor. Feels really good. But as things stand, you can only run with that open up to about 30-35 knots. If you go beyond 40, apparently, there's a bit of movement in terms of the window coming up and down, so they're going to introduce a couple of catches so that when you specify it manual rather than with the electric actuator, it stays nice and firmly put however fast you happen to be going. Now we really will make our way forward in a second, but just before I forget, this is a really key difference between the 38 and the 37. This is a drop-down terrace on the starboard side. It's mirrored on the port side. It's optional, costs about 10,000 euros for the pair of them. And then manual, as you can see, a couple of catches, one forward, one aft, and then a couple of cables to keep it in position. Good and sturdy though in operation. We use them at anchor in a bay. And they're quite attractive. What's unusual about them is they sit relatively proud of the water. So if you sit on them, the only thing you're going to get wet are your feet. And it's also quite useful in a nice sheltered bay to stick your inflatables beneath that platform and tie them up, just to keep them out of harm's way. Now, as we make our way forward, you'll notice, well, firstly, as I say, the freeboard is good. Gunnels halfway up my thigh, feels nice and safe. There's a good bit of breadth there as well. Some grab rails built into the gunnels there. Nice low profile stuff, and this is very low profile too. As you'll notice, we've got no bolt-on stainless steel grab rail. What we have instead, if I pop the camera up, is a very nicely finished moulding, a lip for your hand that runs all the way round to the bow there. So it's very safe, very low profile, very simplistic. I like that a lot. We've also got an enormous side panel here, which illustrates just how big this aperture is for the skipper on the starboard side, this side door. So big, in fact, that actually when you pull the door all the way back, you can have a skipper in position there and you can still nip in behind him without actually pushing him out of the way. We'll take a look at that in a second, and of course we've got a door of similar proportions on the port side. But when we reach the bow, well, again, this being an Axopar, you can have all kinds of configurations up here, but this for me is the best of them. We got the traditional gullwing doors that lift up on either side of this central unit just to give you access down into that bow cabin and also to admit air and light down there as well. Plenty of panels in the top sides of those mouldings there, just to introduce lots of natural light down below. And this, just one step up, it's the only step on this entire side deck. As you can see, everything's single level, very easy to navigate. Just one small step up to factor in a bit of extra volume down below. And here we have the optional bow lounge. Really like this very much indeed. Forward facing bench big enough for 2, and then space for another 3 people further forward, with a table, as you can see, that comes with 3 receptacles in the deck there. So you can drop this into the space and turn this into a sunbed. You can also, as it has been here, shift it forward so that there's space to move from side to side behind that, or you can shift it a little further aft so the people here can reach the table more easily for lunch. It's a really nice setup. Little cushions on the rails there, decent bit of storage underneath. Step through forepeak, as you would expect. And if we spin around and head down the port side, but again, really easy to navigate because of this lip with this unusual kind of inverted upward facing roof structure. And actually, I'll stand up on the gunnels here and we'll take a look at that roof structure, because it's quite a significant piece of equipment. As I say, quite stylish mouldings. We've got space for a little solar panel there, a very, very large sunroof, fabric sunroof, bathe that saloon in light when you want it, and a good size of roof rack as well for carrying all your gear up top. Because arguably, this boat doesn't have a great deal of storage for your bulky kit if you want to go away with your family for a long weekend. So the option to put a roof box up top for your bulky gear is quite a useful one. And one of the reasons that it doesn't have a tremendous amount of space for storage is because the space is worked so very hard. And it all starts, of course, with this central saloon, the sheltered seating inside the pilot house itself. Now let's move straight aft and have a look at this aft bench. This is the opening aft window I'm talking about. A couple of little catches, and then give it a little shove and up she goes. And as you can see, if you're sitting here in the corner with your arm on there and you've got some people out here on this raised sunbed in that cockpit, that integration is really fantastic. Now you imagine that both of these are folded flat at anchor. You've got people on these little benches as well, these little lounge seats. It's a very effective space, particularly given that this is a pilot house cruiser with lots of sheltered space inside. What we have in here in terms of the seating arrangement is pretty impressive though. As you can see, we've got a U-shaped dinette, a seating section on the starboard side, full beam bench aft. We've got a table, a high-low table that drops into that space. You can turn this with the infills into a third occasional double bed to sleep 6 people. And that in itself is pretty impressive. But as you can see, we've also got this little removable cushion on the leading edge of that table. And that means that you can use the Helm bench for 2 people, which incidentally is a change over the 37. You add individual seat pods here, and this is much more effective, I think. You've got a second forward-facing bench here, and then you've got the full beam bench aft, so you can easily seat 7 people, maybe 8, facing forward, underway in the shelter of the pilot house on this boat, and that is a particularly impressive thing. But if we move towards the back end here, you see we also get access to the aft cabin. If we just hinge up this cushion, we've got a very simple popper here. Pop that down onto this little button, and then we can lift up this foot brace as well. And there we have fantastic access to that aft cabin. And I've got to say, I really got loads of time for this space. We've got a big window facing out past those engines, little port lights on the side for fresh air. Headroom is remarkably good, and so are the basic dimensions. You can easily sleep a 6.5 footer in here, fore and aft. Cushions around the side to make it extra comfy. And I would be tempted, if I was the owner of this boat, to actually sleep in here and use the bow cabin in its lounge configuration, just to make things a little bit easier for myself. A little bit of storage as well. No storage beneath the bed, no space for that. But remarkably, they say that this particular option, as well as being very hard working, making the most of the space, it also quietens down those engines a little bit. It gives you an extra bit of refinement. And we drove this boat yesterday and found that to be exactly the case. So it's a very useful option indeed. If we look further forward, well, as you can see, drop down these bolsters, you can reverse the backrest on that helm bench to face aft as well. And actually, while we're at the helm, it's worth having a slightly closer look, because it's a very impressive example of its type. Ergonomically, it's fantastic. It really feels very good indeed. What I particularly like though, if we shut this up, is the fact that everything here is designed to be particularly easy for the single-handed skipper. It's a very novice-friendly boat indeed. So as I say, big side doors on both sides. easy access fore and aft on decks that, as I say, are pretty much single level. Plenty of grabbing points, a cleat directly here, exactly where you would want it. And of course, we got a joystick here with sky hooks, so you can just straddle that space, really relax into a parking manoeuvre. It's not difficult at all. But what we'll do before we actually take a drive is check out the cabin space, because I think on this test boat it's particularly impressive. We've got the optional port galley here, just a single ring and a sink with a little fridge beneath and some storage spaces. If I pop down into that space and turn the camera around, you can see that my head is in the aperture for that door that I just opened, for that hatch. So I can stand bolt upright, plenty of ventilation, plenty of natural light, and I can still see everyone up here on the main deck. So that's quite a pleasant way to do it. And opposite that, we've got the optional heads compartment. Now this is something that the 37 did not have, and this of course is very useful indeed, particularly the way they've done it. So as you can see, I can latch that door into that port galley. There's also an optional curtain that comes across here, so if you're a day boater or if you're just up top and somebody else is in bed, you can come and use the facilities. You can make yourself a bacon sandwich without actually invading the privacy of whoever is sleeping up forward in that bow cabin. So that's really good. As you can see, there's a bit of a stoop to get in here and no natural light in there, but we do have some high level storage, a decent toilet and a proper vanity unit, plus a little shower fitting, as you can see, and of course a deck drain to get rid of that water. So a really useful private wet room style heads compartment. But if we just close up that heads compartment now and look further forward, well, this is the reason that if I were a private owner using this for me and my partner for cruising, that I'd be tempted to use the aft cabin as my permanent bed and use this as my lounge. Because as you can see, we've got side cushions here at the access point to that bed in the forepeak. And we also, if I just nip in here and grab this little toggle, pull this up she comes, and there you have it. You've got a proper C-shaped lounge section with a little table fitting that goes in here. There's the bracket for that. In fact, there's the table just beneath these cushions. So that's a really good little spot for perhaps between 3 and 5 people. Really useful spot for a family of 4 to come down below. And these, of course, if we open those up, you'll see what a difference that makes to the space. One on either side, little push button mechanism. And then if we give a little shunt, up it goes on its rams. And what a difference that makes to this zone of the boat. It's fantastic, really good. Axopar was the first to introduce these doors, and as I say, it works a treat. But that's not the end of the story. We also have little fold-up cushions here on both sides that reveal steps, and then you can pull these side cushions down. So what we have is a really neat and easy access point to come into here from the bow, make your way fore and aft. Having said this boat struggles with storage, well, if we lift this up, you'll see that we do have a decent bit of storage beneath those gullwing doors. Jan Erik tells me that's a good sort of spot. A couple of backpacks on either side you can tuck away out of sight without cluttering up your main spaces. There is a little sort of drop in the deck head here, just as you make way forward, so you've got to keep a lookout for that. I've cracked my head off that a couple of times, but it is a very good use of space. When you do drop this cushion into that position, what you have is a very serviceable double bed. Again, the deck head does drop a little. It needs to do that for the deck in that bow lounge, but that's a very useful asset, so that's a compromise you're going to be willing to make. As for that helm, well, it's not quite time to pop out yet, so we'll nip up through these gullwing doors onto that starboard side deck and pop round and take a closer look at that. Now, as I say, the ergonomics here are lovely. I'll shut this up again because I want you to just feel the quality of the visibility as well. Tiny, tiny, almost non-existent mullions. That reverse screen. Right enough, visibility is significantly better when you don't leave the gullwing doors wide open like that. But I've left my bottle of water on the top of the dash there because I wanted to remind myself that even though it's a wonderful helm, there are no cup holders. And that, for me, as a man who enjoys a cup of tea, is a bit of a no-no. I'm sure they could factor space for that in somewhere. So let's just get that out of the way. and talk about the details a little further. We've got a pair of 12-inch plotters here on the main tier of the dash, some manual switch gear there, that skyhook joystick on the starboard side, a little spot for your phone charger, twin throttles to the right hand side of the adjustable wheel, and your tabs and Sleipner bow thruster there on the port side, plus your anchor remote and also your little stereo remote there as well. We got a lovely kind of matte dash. It's quite fibrous, does a great job of avoiding any glare, and that's helped of course by the fact we got that reverse screen, so we don't have lots of Mediterranean sun just blasting down on top of the dash. Before we head out to sea though, to take a look at how this boat performs, it's worth having a look to port and just investigating these Suntop models. As I say, it's the world debut here, and we've got a couple of very different configurations. We've got the twin 300s here with quite a traditional set of forward-facing offshore seats. 3 reversible seats at the helm, a table in the middle, 4 reversible seats further aft, lots of space to move around, and the same kind of cockpit wet bar that we saw on the twin 300 version of the cross cabin earlier. But as you can see, you can also spec this new Suntop model with the all new U-shaped seating configuration in the centre of the deck there. Really flexible, very much geared towards relaxing sociably at anchor. Lots of backrest that you can lift out and relocate, so you can face forward and aft in all sorts of configurations. You can also drop that table into the space and turn it into a vast sunbed. And of course you've got that overhead sunroof, so you can either shade yourselves from the midday sun or you can open it up and use it as a proper sunbed. Clever backrest forward as well at the helm bench. You can reverse that and face aft in the chaise longue style, and it's split so the skipper can stay in his position and do his thing while everybody else lounges. So it's a really flexible and attractive kind of proposition, and we've taken these boats out and had a good play. We've taken them to anchor and had a good lie down and a relax, and it works for that. But realistically, for most boaters in most conditions, this cross cabin version is far and away the more practical option. But if you feel torn between the open anchor friendly Suntop version and this thoroughly practical and satisfying cross cabin model, then just wait a while, because as you'd expect of Axopar, well, later this year at the Cannes Yachting Festival, in fact, they're going to be launching the cross-top model, which takes the basic arrangement we have on the Suntop but extends those screens up and aft to give you that extra bit of shelter, give you that extra little bit of practicality. Now, first thing is first. Even though this is ostensibly a pilot house boat, a boat with 4-season shelter, you've got to say, with that big old sunroof open up above, the twin doors slid right back, the aft window open if you're planning to go no more than 30-35 knots, well, I've got to say this is a very open feeling boat. So though it's far more practical in many ways than the Suntop versions, you really don't feel like you're sacrificing too much of that openness. As regards to dynamics, well, before we get up to speed, I'll stick the kill cord on, but what you'll have noticed already, and we've seen this before on Axopar boats, is that directional tracking really very stable indeed. Because you've got quite a plumb bow, that reverse bow, we've got quite an elongated waterline length. So nice and steady, nice and flat too. And you'll find that as we put the revs on, it remains pretty much that way. There's arguably a little bit more bow lift than on the 37, but that's entirely deliberate. As I say, this is a revised hull profile. They want a little bit more bow lift at these low sort of 9 to 11 knot speeds, just to improve the comfort a touch. But it's minor. It is minor. You can still see the horizon, no problem at all, both forward and aft. And as we get up onto the plane, well, with everything set on auto tabs, auto trim, I'd say we're planing as slow as maybe 17, maybe 16 knots, but I feel very confident that if I take charge of the tabs, take charge of the leg angles, I can plane as slow as 15 knots on this boat. and be very comfortable while I'm doing it. And that illustrates already another point about this boat, and that is the softness of the ride. We'll get her up to speed a little. We've got a 4.3 run in and maybe 1 to 2 footers, so nothing particularly huge to play with. But we'll hunt out a couple of swells if we can, because let me tell you, the softness of ride available from this boat is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, extraordinary to a degree where I don't think I've experienced quite such a ride from a monohull. It's very much more in the kind of power cat order of things, whereby you see a swell approaching and quite naturally as a monohull fan you brace your legs and you wait for the impact, and it just doesn't come. It's very soft indeed, to the extent where yesterday, when we had livelier seas than this, I actually sat up in the bow, which is absolutely something I wouldn't tend to do. And I was sitting up there not just at 20, 25 knots, but at 40, 45, and so were a couple of other people. It really is quite an extraordinary thing. And the bow flare, that plays an important part too, because we misbehaved for several hours yesterday, and at no stage did any water make its way inboard, so that's very effective indeed. And yet it's not overdone, that bow flare. You don't feel like your revs are being pulled off a little by the hull gripping at the water. You're still sliding nice and efficiently over the top. Actually, on that note, while we're talking about efficiency, it's just worth mentioning the impact that these driver aids have. So we were putting together the performance figures, and as I say, auto tabs, auto trim in terms of the leg angles. And quite naturally, those auto systems want to keep the hull quite flat and planted. So right at the top end, we were topping out at about 5,750 RPM and about 43 knots. And I'm thinking, well, that's too low. So we took charge of the systems ourselves, tucked away the tabs, wound out those leg angles a bit more, and it went right up to 6,200 RPM and nearly 47 knots, so an additional 4 knots, an additional 3, 4, 500 RPM. Now most people will drive it with the auto on, but all I'm saying here is that this is the kind of boat where if you turn off those automatic systems, you can have a really good play, and that's exactly what we're going to try to do right now. We'll get her right up to the top end. 41 knots, 42. I've got lots of lovely trim on those legs now. 45. 46. And as you can feel, you know, we got a decent bit of sea state running through us here. It's kind of coming across us on our port quarter to the odd 3-footer maybe, but feel that. Just no impact at all. It's absolutely lovely. Now we're charging into a head sea here, a decent head sea. And what we'll do is we'll spin around to starboard first. We're doing 31 knots. Decent sea running through, as I say, to the odd 3-footer. But look at this, lots of lovely heel, really composed. I could put on a bit more pace, 35, 36 knots, slightly lift the legs as we move into a following sea, 39 knots, 40 knots. Oh, it's just lovely. And we'll swing around at port as well, at 46.5 knots. Just trim those legs in a touch as we do so. Now, as I say, this is a stepped hull, but you wouldn't believe it. Yeah, on the straight, loads of efficiency, but so much composure in the turn, loads and loads of grip. Not so much that you feel you're about to get flung sideways. It's just so novice friendly. Now, as I say, you can go with the 300 horsepower V8s. I've tried that on the other cross-cabin model, but you really don't feel the same order of performance at all. Yeah, it exceeds 40 knots, but it's a little bit noisier. And when you're throwing her through a turn, you don't just feel that same level of torque. You know, you wash a little bit of the pace off, or here, there's grunt on tap, and that's not just good fun. It's great for water sports, and it's great for quite a relaxed cruise. Now, in terms of that cruising efficiency, well, with the driver's aids on, as I say, it tends to bury the hull a little more than I would like to. So we're seeing around about 4 litres per nautical mile at about 32 knots, which is a bit of a sweet spot. Take off the driver aids, and we're dropping that to around about 3.5, sometimes a little less, so you can increase your range on the basic 830 litre tank from about 160 miles towards 200. Either way, I have no great interest in preserving our fuel. What I want to do while I'm out here on a boat like this is play. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. Well, what a boat that is. And you might say it's more kind of a small 45 than it is a large 37. That's the scale of the difference between those two boats. You might also arguably point out that it's more like a kind of sporting GT than an outright performance machine. And in spite of all the performance it delivers, I say that because it's got some of the classical traits of the GT. It's got the long range, it's got the soft ride, it's got the comfort, and it's got the refinement. We were seeing around about 78 decibels at 37-40 knots, which is really very impressive indeed. But if you look at these, we've got the sun top, and later in the year we've got the cross top. But for me, the 38 is at its very best in the form of that cross cabin, and in particular with the twin 350s rather than the 300s, with the aft cabin rather than the wet bar, with the galley down below, with the optional heads compartment, and with this excellent sociable bow lounge, which converts into a sunbed in any case, mimicking the fixed version that we see on these day-centric sun-top boats. So look, as you can no doubt tell, I'm extremely impressed with this boat. I think it's, without question, the highlight of my year so far. I think it's a magic piece of equipment, and I'm certain you guys are going to love it. But if you disagree with that, then please do leave your comments in the section below. We'd love to hear from you. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, then make sure you subscribe to the Motorboat and Yachting channel.